Hi, I'm Dave Roberts and this is Angling Escapades. Hello and welcome to Angling Escapades, and join me this afternoon on the River Wye for well, a sort of a short session, I'd say. Obviously it's the afternoon, we're in limited daylight hours, and I've come today real test today really. We've got a river that's over 2 meters above normal level. We have had a massive flood recently, and we've had snow on the mountains on the weekend, which is now slowly thawing into the river. Air temperatures no more than 3 degrees today. It's very cold, so basically everything that you would want to go against you if you're out fishing for chub and barbel is happening. But what I want to do today is trying to show that you can get bites when it's like this. Now I could have gone, you know, to the town stretches or where there's dace and roach and chub and little chub and things like that, and got bites, you know, generated bites fishing maggots, worms, things like that. You know, but that would be easier. But if we can catch a barbel or a chub today, then it'll at least prove that, you know, even in the most severe conditions, which these really are now. I mean, the only thing we've got going for us today is the fact there's colour in the water still. You know, as long as you know, barbel do feed better with a bit of colour, but you know, this cold water, cold weather, you know, I find the barbel, they just sit there, you know, they hold down and they sit tight and they don't move very much to feed. So you've got to approach it with caution. you know, your baits and your methods that work for you in the summer and the autumn and most of the winter are maybe not going to work today. So it's for me, it's kind of a very much a measured approach, and just a way of, you know, try and get a bite. You know, if I can get one bite, then I can worry about the next bite after that, but let's try and get one bite and see where we go. There's so many components that add to this not being a very good day for fishing, and there's loads of things that we don't know about. You know, these fish have been they've sat through a big flood, they've sat through sub-zero temperature, you know, when the water temperature drops below 4 degrees and it's bitter cold, and then on top of that you've got all the stuff that washes in with a flood. You know, you think the amount of things like salt off the roads, you know, the rivers flooding into people's gardens and all manner of premises, and you know, with heavy rain there's all kinds of things washing into the water table, and we don't know what effect those have on fish. You know, a lot of them will stop the fish opening their mouths or wanting that water rushing over their gills and things like that, you know, and we just don't know what they are. So we've got to approach it in a fishing sense. You know, like I say, the baits that we sometimes rely on, our pellets and our paste and our meat and what have you, and that they just might not suit what the fish might still want to feed. They just don't want to feed on those baits. If you imagine, for instance, you've got, like I say, about the salt washing in off the roads, you know, salty baits, you know, like meat and stuff like that, maybe they're sick of it, they might not want it. So you know, it really is you know, you've got to sort of keep your options open, and you know, for that reason, you know, I really, in the winter, I carry an array of baits, because it's not a case of not being confident in your baits, it's just that, exactly that, you don't know what sort of mood those fish are in, so it pays to carry plenty. So I bought plenty with me today. Come here, Monty, out of the way, come here, come here, right, come over here, good boy. There we go. So I bought plenty with me today, and I bought a bit of everything, you know. So I've got some hemp, I've got some meat, chopped up meat, and meat for the hook, you know, Holton then. And then what I've done, I've soaked down some pellets, some halibut pellets. You know, I've just soaked those in cold water for 20 minutes. You know, they don't break down like a coarse pellet, but you know, soak those down for 20 minutes, so they're quite sticky. I've got a bit of ground bait. I don't rely on ground bait so much in the winter. I don't feel it works so well, you know, in the autumn and the early winter. You know, in summer certainly, you know, when you get colour in the water, I'm like big feeders, big, you know, halibut ground bait feeders, and you know, creating loads of activity and getting bait down, but less so in the winter. But it still does play a part in my armoury, and you know, and then obviously moving on to hook baits, then I've got halibut pellets, I've got some paste knocked up, you know, basically some ground down halibut pellets and bits and pieces in there, you know, nice sticky paste. I've got some boilies, you know, so it's all things I can dry. And then obviously I've got the naturals, I've got some red maggots, and I've got some worms, and that's really what I'm going to start on. My general rule of thumb when it's like this is I'll start on a natural bait, worms or maggots, you know. Now if I was expecting there to be a lot of dace and roach and stuff around, I probably wouldn't fish maggots, but certainly a lobworm, you know, half a lobworm is a great starting bait, because again, these fish will not have seen a lot of pellets and meats and boilers, etc. They, you know, so that can go two ways. They could either be it could really turn them on and they want to, you know, they fancy a bit because they haven't seen it for a while, or it could put them, you know, it could spook them. So I always find it's better to start on the naturals. You know, so I'm going to start today on a, you know, half a lobworm. But feed wise, I mean, again, you know, like I say, you're not going to be feeding lots. So what I've got set up today is I've put on like a cage feeder, but a very small one, you know, for by Wye standards anyway. I mean, that's you know, that's only a little feeder there. I've got a good add-on lead on there. You know, the pegs I'm choosing are, you know, generally slack. You know, you've got slacks on the inside going out into flow, and I'll be casting this out into the flow and letting it just drop on the edge of the flow. But all I want to do is just put a little bit of bait, not big amounts, just want to put little bits in, just to get a little flavour out there, just to get them interested. You know, I've got sort of like a 3.5 foot hook link, down to a size 12. I'm just going to put, like I say, just start on natural baits on that. But that's all I want to do, is just put a little bit of flavour in there, a little bit of bait in. Just, you know, I don't want to go at it too mad putting loads in, because these barbel will not feed like that in the winter. You know, in the summer when we put our beds of bait down, or, you know, big impact and let them settle over it, it won't be like that. You know, you've literally got to fish for one bite at a time, you know, and hopefully you get one. So that's my setup. It's, you know, standard stuff. I've got a 14-foot rod. You know, I like the longer rod, especially in the higher water. It gets your rod up, gets your line out of the water, and also if you're fishing in really flooded conditions, there goes a cormorant. If you're fishing in really flooded conditions and you're fishing off the bank, you know, it gets your line away from that bank a bit, so as it's not rubbing on anything. There might be branches and brambles and stuff on the inside. So I like the 14-foot rod. I've got a rather, you know, not a stiff tip in there. I like, you know, when in conditions like this, generally there's only one bite you're fishing for, that's a drop back. You know, I'll be casting this out, letting a little bit of line out just to take the pressure off the line, and then if a fish dislodges our feeder, we just get a straight drop back. So nice soft tip, that just cushions it. There's no real, if it's a real stiff tip, then there's no give, whereas I find, you know, with a soft tip it sort of gives a little bit, and then, you know, it enables you to hold bottom with a lot less lead. So that's my setup. I've got 10-pound line, 8-pound hook link. That's it really, you know, standard sort of stuff. You know, if I hook anything, that should handle anything I'm going to hook today. You know, I'm confident of getting most things out with that. So bait wise, what I'm going to feed, so what I've done, so I've soaked these pellets up, so all I'm going to do is basically like a little goodie mixture really. So I'm going to take like a handful of everything, a couple of handfuls of pellets, a handful of hemp, and all these are damp baits, a handful of meat, not even a handful of meat, just a few bits of meat to start with, a bit more of that, a bit more of that. So it's just a nice little goodie mix in there, and then all I'm going to do is just add enough ground bait to it, just so that it sort of holds together. You know, the pellets themselves on their own will mould quite nicely into that feeder, but I just want to put enough ground bait in there just so as it just holds. Like I say, I don't want a big cloud of ground bait coming off, but a little bit of flavour certainly won't do any harm. You just put enough in until it starts to bind and you know it's going to hold in your feeder. I'm just going to put a little bit more pellet in there just to help it a bit more. So now all that hemp and pellet and everything will mould, you know, and that'll sit tight in that feeder, and that little feeder just giving it a little flavour package out there on the bottom, just drifting a few odd bit of feed out. And this, you know, all the flavours that we know the barbel like, chub like, they're all in there, but we're not putting massive amounts in that might spook them. Just a little flavour, something that might just trigger them to go, actually I fancy a bit of that. So I'm going to start off, like I say, on a worm. Especially in cold water, I find worms are such a good bait. You know, no matter what species you're fishing for, if it's, you know, roach, dace, whatever, you know, a worm is a great starting bait. And I have no doubt I'll be fishing, you know, I'll be switching to a hair rig at some point and fishing with meat and pellets. But start off with just a, you know, a medium-sized lobworm, and I'm just going to hook that through the head. I like to hook them through the head because it's the toughest part, and I'll just nip them off halfway down. Then I know if anything's pulling and poking at it that it's not going to rip it off the hook, especially if you've got more turbulent water as well. I'm just going to plug that feeder, put it in there reasonably tight just so as it holds in there, so I know it's going to sink to the bottom. You know, it's going to release a few bits and pieces, but a lot of it's going to stay in there, and it's going to be a real target for these fish to come in. Let's say I'm not fishing far out. I'm just going really just over into the flow and letting my line drop back into the slacker water. So it's just a gentle side lob. There we go. Follow it down so you feel it touch the bottom. And just let a little bit of line out. That's holding nicely there. Like I say, it's not too extreme. It's not like the river's raging, but it's still quite thick. You know, and ideally, obviously it depends on your, it depends on what you've got, you know, what sort of condition the river's in, whether there's loads of leaves coming down and things like that. But, you know, and generally I'm going to leave this out there for quite a long time. I'm not looking to build the peg up and cast and cast and cast. I'm just putting something out there. If there's any fish that are on the move or are interested in feeding or in the area, just might just smell that bit of bait, come and have a look and see if we can get a bite. Well, we've been fishing about 45 minutes now. I think I've had 5 casts. And all I've done so far is switch between maggots and worms. I haven't gone into fishing bigger baits yet, and I think I'm not going to invest too much time in this swim, you know, swapping baits. I think I'd rather head down to the pegs. You know, I've got 2 pegs in mind that I really fancy will be my best chance. Really good barbel pegs in the winter. I know they live there. So I'm not going to invest too much time in this swim. It was worth coming here and having a go. It's sort of an in-between peg. It's sort of, you know, there's a bit of gravel here, but it's also like a seam of silt and running up onto clay. So it's kind of like a bit of an in-between peg. And if perchance the fish were out and marauding and having a good feed, which I know is unlikely in these conditions, but even so, if they were, then, you know, it's the sort of place you'd expect to get bites. But so it was worth dropping in here to start with. But absolutely no signs at all, and like I say, I'm going to move on now, and you know, as I say, it's all about going with your instinct, as so much fishing is. You know, my instinct tells me that there'll be, you know, better swims further down the river, so that's where I'm going to head now. So I've moved now into one of the second spots I had in mind, and different river again here. It's pushing through a bit more pace on the river here, and but I know here we're sat on proper clay beds here. There's no gravel here, and these are good barbel, you know, winter pegs for barbel. And you know, obviously still with the cold water, it doesn't mean anything, but at least I know they live here. And I'm going to go through, you know, I'm going to go through the same sort of process, same baits, you know, sort of go through the live baits. Got a bunch of maggots on at the moment. But now, pretty soon, I'm going to start going through the bait box a little bit more, meat, pellets, things like that, and just try, you know, all those different flavours that I've got in that ground bait, you know, the pellets, the ground bait. And I'm going to, you know, and then I'll perhaps try isolating those different individual things. So I've got the pellets, you know, just the dampened pellets, and just plugging those in and fishing a pellet. And same with the meat, I've got the chopped up meat. So, you know, just going through the changes and just keeping your mind fresh and giving yourself every chance. And you might just spot, you know, things can change, conditions can change. It's just starting to rain now. You know, the temperature can change, water temperature can change. So you just don't know. You've just got to keep changing, keep doing different things, keep your mind active and keep positive. Or into something. Doesn't feel very big, whatever it is. Oh. I think it's a little chub. It is a chub. Well, there you go. It's a bite. It's a bite, and on a cold day, when you think you must be absolutely mad to be out, and you haven't had a sign, that little chap, although he may not be the biggest, that just gives you hope and encouragement that there's more to follow. Little chub of about 1.5 pounds, I'd say. Well, I hope, my friend, that you're going to spur some of either your bigger cousins or even them barbel into feed. So it's a bite. We've saved the blank. Off you go, mister. Right, we're in the game. You can have a piece of meat. Oh. So what I'm doing now is I'm basically isolating the ingredients that we put in our little mix to start with now. So I've switched now to a pellet or a double pellet on the hook on the band, and I'm just going to plug this feeder now with the soaked halibut pellets. They just sit in that little cage grip mesh feeder, lovely, you know, and they'll just squeeze those in there, and they'll just squeeze those in there, and they'll just sort of leak out slowly, odd bits falling out all the time, and puts another flavour into the water. I've just had half an hour fishing meat feeder, just feeding meat on the band. So yeah, just going through the box and just trying to make something happen. It's, you know, it's not nice, it's not great conditions, it's very character building, I'd say, but you just got to keep trying different things. You just got to keep going and believe that something you do is gonna work. It might not, but you've got to believe that it is, otherwise there's no point in even trying. So let's see if a little switch to pellets makes any difference. Well, I've been through the bait box now. It is proving to be as tough as what I probably expected, but hoped it wouldn't be. So what I'm going to do, the light's starting to go now, so you know, on this river you've got two choices. You can either cut right back and go negative, or get even more positive, and I'm afraid it's always the latter that I choose. So I am going to change this feeder. I'm going to put a bigger feeder on. I'm going to put a feeder with more lead on, and I'm going to go out in the flow. I'm going to go back to meat feeder, the old favourite. You know, you always go to your go-to method when times are hard, so that's what I'm doing. I'm going to put a bigger feeder on, and I'm just going to, we haven't got much daylight left now, so you know, I'm happy to fish into dark for a little while. Basically I always fish until I fish from my rod up to the sky, and I fish until I can't see my rod tip properly. I don't like night fishing necessarily for barbel, but that first sort of half hour, 45 minutes just past dusk can be really good. So I'm going to go on the attack for the last however long we've got. Pile some meat into that feeder, really tuck it in there, and we can go right out in the flow with this. I've probably got about 4 ounces, 5 ounces on there, I would think. Let's see how that holds out there. Letting a nice big boa line out. That's holding just about there. That's alright there. That'll be alright. Give Montgomery a piece of meat because he's giving me the evil eye. I think he actually hates me now. Just being stood out here. Do you hate me, boy? Are you a good boy? Are we going to catch a fish? If we catch a fish, you can have the rest of that meat. Oh, we've only got a nail one. And now what is it? I'm gonna have to stand up. I've not felt it nod its head properly yet. Oh, it's having a go now. It's hard to tell when you've got so much weight on. Even a small chub can feel like, it feels, pulling a bit now, it feels like it could be a small barbel. Like I say, until you actually catch up with it, because you've got so much line out on the bow. We've got these trees below us as well, so we've got to be careful. Oh, feels like a barbel. I knew there was a bite there somewhere to be had. And I did feel that at this time of night, it's the right time of the day to be getting a bite for sure. But I do start to wonder. Don't think it's a big fish, but it's a fish. Come on, baby. Yeah, it's a barbel, all right. It's only a little one, but it's a barbel. Get in there. Get in. Oh, I can hardly move on that cold, but that fish there. It's warmed me up no end. Look at that. Let's have a look at you. It's not the biggest barbel I'm ever going to catch, but I'll tell you what, on a cold day I could kiss you. In fact, I'm going to look at that. Right, let's get you unhooked and get you back. And you know what, I think we've got time for another one as well. Is that being greedy? I just feel if it's that time of night and there's an odd and about, why not? Beautiful. Always amazes me that the condition these fish are in. You know, they've been through, we've had the biggest flood of the winter a week ago. You know, there's all kinds going on in the river, you know, there's debris and God knows what, and they're in as good a condition as you'll ever see. Incredible creatures. Right, let's get this one back. Now, have we got time for one more? Oh God, it's cold. I must be absolutely crazy. But I'll tell you what, that holding that barbel was like holding a hot water bottle, or it was a cup of tea, or it was a Sunday roast. That's exactly, just makes it all worthwhile. Oh, I'm all of a muddle now. There we go. Right. Ooh. Ooh. Balance then. Right. You can definitely have a piece of meat now, boy. You're such a good boy, ain't you, eh? Right. Celebratory piece for Montgomery. Good boy. Well folks, I think it's time to call it a day. I'm absolutely froze. Monty hates me. I can still see the rod tipping off edge. It's not gone completely pitch black yet, but I think we better quit while we're ahead. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Something a bit different, something a bit more challenging. But it tells a story, and it shows that even on the days when you think it's hopeless, there's always a bite somewhere, even though we've only had the one. That fish, in the summer we'd be putting fish like 5-pound fish like that, putting them back without giving them a second thought. But today that fish meant everything. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Like I say, something a little bit different. And please keep subscribing, keep your wonderful comments coming, and we'll see you next time. Hopefully something a bit warmer.